Jackson Board of Selectmen's meeting in March here. It's March 19th, 4:30 p.m. Thank you all for coming. We're glad you're here. We've got a bit of a different order of things for a number of different reasons today on the agenda. So we're going to start off with agenda item number 1 to accommodate the police who have some important business to take care of after this. So we'll start off with agenda item number 1, the police report.
Thank you very much for accommodating my request. I appreciate it. And good afternoon. I have just a couple of quick items. First and foremost on the list, I wanted to just thank the selectmen and as well the town for allowing me as the chief and to say a few words at the town hall meeting. I think it was beneficial for the town to see and hear the names of all of our new employees. So that was great. And our employees enjoyed seeing the town as well. Past couple of weeks, it's been business as usual, but I did want to give you one particular update. I reported a month or 6 weeks ago about an untimely death here in town. And the speculation at the time was that untimely death was directly related to heroin and the growing problem of that. I received the autopsy report on that individual, and we never like to see a death, but thankfully that specific one, although untimely, was attributed to natural causes and had no direct correlation to heroin at the time. So just to get some closure on that. And just a great thank you to anyone who read the Neighbor Watching Neighbor piece that we did a couple of weeks ago, and that really came back to us this past week with some prominent residents reporting some suspicious activity on Route 16 up near the area of Dana Place. Due to their reporting in a very quick manner, we were able to respond. We were able to track down the individual, the vehicle, and really investigate what that person was doing, why he was in Jackson, and was there anything afoot. Again, thankfully there was not. There was a lot of little things that built up to a big thing, but the big thing wasn't any criminal activity. So that's just a great shout out to all the people who are watching out for their town. And those were the 3 primary issues I wanted to bring everybody up to speed with. That concludes my business.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with the select board's permission, I'll excuse myself to go to some training. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent. And so our next order of business is to select the chairman for our next year here. We always do that our first meeting after the regular town meeting in March. Most people that follow along with how we choose a selectman. There's been a custom in place for a while. However, this year I understand that Bill would like to make a nomination for the person to serve in the position as chair.
There's some, I guess, standard rotation in this business, but I think I have enough to do. I don't need to sit in that seat. So I've asked John if he would sit in that seat. He's kind of the next kind of rotation in. So my nomination is to let John sit in the seat, and I would appreciate it if he'd do that for me.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. Abstain.
So moved.
Thank you.
Excellent. Keep your stuff out of my way.
The door hitching fan the other way out.
Thank you for serving, John, in that capacity.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for coming for me for both the election and town meeting. For those people who didn't hear, I went down to visit my sister who's been battling cancer for the last 4 or 5 years, and fortunately she's doing very well. And it was definitely nice to make that trip. be selected again, and we'll try to do so, is fill the seat as best I can. And Bob did a great job, and thank you. Thank you very much. It's like find a pea. But yeah, Bob, you did a great job, and I certainly will obviously need your input as always, and thank you very much for your service for the last year. I guess next up is item number 3, which is amend and approve minutes from March 5th of Selectmen's meeting. Do I hear a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
All right, and are there any comments or anything from the last meeting?
I have no
Corrections? Do we have anything on that? I don't believe we did. Hearing none, I'll accept the vote for the following minutes, March 5th. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? So be it. And we're doing that, we're updating the action items. Next on item number 4. In the spring, we're going to check, Bill was going to check on the balloon dump road situation. Obviously, it's not spring yet. Close. And talk to Jay and Doug about the town parking issues and get the chamber involved.
Yes, just if I don't know how much time, I mean, if this thing gets started, you probably spend a lot of time on it, and I don't, my position was not to do that this time. There's nothing much we can do until the snow is cleared. You go out and measure things and look at it and make decisions, but I can quickly summarize and I'll tell you what I did. We found these, so I made a copy for each of you all. I have one. I have copies. If you all want to see this, you're welcome to take these copies. Do you want to look at it? It's just, various suggestions. There's
Real share.
no magic into this
Denise is coming right behind you there, so you might want one too.
But I don't want to, we don't want to get hung with the details, but for instance, if you wanted to do, we think we can solve this. The number one issue is event. I think you brought this up last time, was the event planning. And we think the number one way to solve this event planning, or that's 2 ways, is that if somebody's going to have an event, they need volunteer parking people. Like Cranmore has volunteers that do their thing. So we could say every event, pick one like the hospital golf tournament, they would have to provide, pick a number, 1, 2, 3 parking attendants to make it work. There is a problem with that, talking to Chief Jay, is what you're going to have is people doing what they're doing. It sounds like an easy job, but it's going to be a mess. The alternative is that Chief Jay said that his department would be glad to do that on detail work. Then you have it done, it's done right, you're represented with the police, and you pay it for detail pay, and it's not, it's going to be much better. So it's something to think about. We're not really due for a big event for a while. We think we can solve the one up at Whitney's where they have the weddings and parking the road, and we can take care of that. We did not discuss the doublehead issue. That's coming up somewhere else. But we think, for instance, just quickly, if you look at where Thornhill Road comes down, there's probably room in there to put 3 or 4, 5 or 6 parking without lots of money. And if you wanted to do more, I guess, other things, we could put 2 or 3 more in the next space along the side of the road across from the soccer field. And the others, we would have to, that's a much more complicated process because you're taking kind of the front yards and all that stuff. Still gives everybody more parking, so it's a positive, it's not a negative. And the part down in front of the golf course, between the golf course maintenance shack and, Wentworth, wherever that is in there.
Around the tennis court area there.
Yeah, yes, across from that. Yes, let me think.
Same side.
Yes, okay. Is, for instance, if we talked about if you're going to do it, you'd probably want to pave it. But we can still do it without paving it. We just need to talk to, what's his name, see how far back we can push it over. We can probably put Mike, we can probably put 2 or 3 or 4 cars in there. So we think this is pretty much doable, but we think the most doable part is bringing in these people that if you're going to have this event, you're going to have to get the cars parked. And then we'll also talk to, talk to hotel owners, we'll talk to, the ski touring association. We may say to them, look, on these days you have these big events for ski touring, you don't have enough room, you're going to have parking people. And maybe, however do it, but we think it's very solvable without spending lots of money, but there's not a whole lot more we can do until we really can go out with a tape measure and look at this thing and see what's in it. It may take a little bit of gravel or something, but I don't think we have to look at, spending millions of dollars to do this. Oh, as far as the soccer moms go, if we put these 2 or 3 or 4 parking places up at Thornhill, around the Thornhill area, then there's room down by the fish pond or fire pond that we think we can go down there and probably get maybe 4 to 5 cars to park down there and still maintain the opening to the fire pit. So it looks like it's pretty doable if we just get people to cooperate and, you have your parking gurus or we use the police. And in thinking about it, my opinion would be to, use the police on a detailed work. It's only 3 or 4 times a year probably. And that way you maintain some order, everybody knows what they're doing, it's consistent and that kind of thing. And Chief Jetty said his crew would be glad to do it. So that's kind of it without going into much detail, any further detail about it. Okay?
Comments or? Edith?
I find that the parking down here, this public spot right here on the corner, is so underutilized, as well as right here on the side by the fire station. The fire station's part there is not very well labeled for public parking. The P sign with an arrow for this parking here past the library, the parking sign is inside the parking lot. It's not something people see on the road as they approach. So I don't know if the highway department has the restriction of not being able to put that sign closer to the road, maybe a sandwich board somewhere that says more public parking ahead, which Jackson uses when they have a big event. The Nordic Center will say more parking and they'll point an arrow. But of all the times that there's events and people are blocking in front of the Wildcat Tavern in Thornhill, they're walking farther and more dangerously down Thornhill than they would if they just came from right here.
There was a discussion about that, and that's where these parking monitors would come in. In other words, they would be able to say to someone, I'm sorry, you can't park here, but there is ample parking down around the corner. We talked about the new signage, and we'll have to spend some money to put up new signage. That was one of the issues that came up, is making that more obvious. Mm-hmm. But the issue we still think is parking monitors saying, I'm sorry, you can't park here. You need to go down to that field. There's a big sign down there, it's free parking. Something that helps us get it done without towing and nasty stuff.
Right.
But we think it's doable. We think we have enough areas, got enough stuff, that we can do it without a calamity.
The monitor is very good. All the big events up at Great Glen, when they have the bike races, anything, there's volunteers that are there.
Right.
And
well, I think, and I pick on the hospital thing, but if you had, we think if you had even 3 or 4, and you may not have to have that many, but 3 or 4 just to make sure people don't do crazy things and double park and all that. And again, if you overflow, you get them down here. There's room to do that, we think, without making it an issue. But there's really not much we can do till summer. We just need to look at it and go from there after snow's off the ground. So you can add this to my list if you want, that I'm going to do next summer sometime. Spring. Whatever.
It's only 2-3 days away.
Oh, yes.
Anything else on that?
I have nothing.
I had the contact Andrew Field about the double head parking. I guess that's on hold one more time, right?
Yep, on the April 2nd.
April 2nd, we'll be moving that too. Bob talk to Brian Shutt regarding the bridge by Badger. Anything on that one?
Yeah, Brian Scott is
Scott,
actually the
Scott.
regional supervisor for the DOT Highway Department. And I actually talked to his assistant, Phil, who is actually the one that was most familiar with the issue anyway. And this is about the bridge by Badger Realty and the wooden railing and cap on the bridge. And everybody involved in this, and our first conversation, my first conversation with Phil on this was last June. And we were asked to follow up on it again because nothing had happened with it. If you're familiar with where that area is there, that the brook that goes under the road there is got a little cap on it, and it's rotted away, and what's left is a little bit on the funky side too. So somebody asked about it at the most recent meeting. I followed up on it again with Phil, and he said, yeah, we're still aware of that, and that's still on the list. And he recognizes that it's now a year behind. It was first brought to us by Dr. Courier, I think, at our June meeting last year. So he said that, you know, they were somewhat at the mercy of the concrete crew. State has a separation of work and expertise, and so if you look at the concrete posts that the wood is to, those need to be repaired before they can recap it with good wood. So they're aware that it's still on their list, and Phil's actually had committed to contacting Kenny Crowther to see what might be an appropriate short-term repair until their concrete crew can get out there and start that project. But that needs to be where the project begins for a long-term fix. So I sent him a little email recapping our conversation so that everybody's on the same page with what the expectations are. I think that's about it.
Very good. Anything else? What's that? Old Julie's had to work on the parking issues with me, so those are obviously tabled. And our next meeting will be April 2nd at 4:30, followed by the April 16th meeting, and the May 7th and May 21st have been scheduled already. So, are there any objections to any of those?
No.
Moving on to public comments. Bob?
Is there any follow-up on that customer up there, Black? He put the whole thing in the ditch all winter. It's right in that ditch for 30 feet that goes directly into the brook.
The same place it was before, or is it a different
No,
location?
it's worse than it was before.
But before it was in that little side parking lot
Yeah, it's in that, beside the barn.
behind the barn now.
And he's filled that whole ditch in that drains out of that and drains right into the brook. It was better off out beside the brook, because it had to drain a little bit before it went into the culvert system. But now it's wet dry. And he's put that in there all winter.
Right.
I think it's time that he cleaned up his act a little bit. His kids go in that pond in the summertime. I don't know what that sign says, whether they're not supposed to or not, but the kids do go in that pond in the summer. And I'm not allowed on the property, so I can't get into what that sign says. There's quite a few people in town that aren't allowed on the property. But he's not the best natured guy.
You talk about the sign at the Whitney's Pond.
I hope you're not scattering.
The sign at the Whitney's Pond you're talking about?
Yeah. And that's Holy River comes up to the Whitney's Bridge. Another thing on cutting the wood that the town cuts around the town, cut the trees. I think the wood ought to be left in town rather than hauled to Conway. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, Bob, but
Yeah.
the town paid for hauling some wood to Conway, and I don't think that's quite right.
put that on my action item list, and I'll follow up on that between meetings. Thank you.
I think there's enough people that's living on heat assistance that some of them could use the wood.
I like it. All right, anything else for public comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to Kevin, the building inspector report. How are you?
All right, good.
Small piece of paper, that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is. That's a lot on there.
Well, good and bad, I suppose,
Yeah.
pluses and minuses.
You see, approved 3 new permits. One's for a 10 by 20 garage on an existing garage. The other one's for a basement renovation. And some minor cosmetic work on the house, some stuff with the deck. And we have another one for a brand new kitchen in a house here in Jackson. And let's see, Good Evening went out and checked the house today, and we issued a certificate of occupancy to this house.
Does it have a reflective number out front?
Effective number, it does have a number, that's the first thing we check.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do check that, believe me.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's the first thing on the list.
Thank you.
Yeah, so they're good there. I had someone call me about a piece of land in town, and they told me what lot it was, and I knew all about it. And I just told them that, basically, it was an old subdivision that was never approved by the town. And I see that they're selling lots online now. And I don't know where that's going, but I think if someone was to buy a lot, they'd run into a deed problem anyway. So, and hopefully they call me beforehand to find out what can be done with this lot. But
Where's
right
this
now,
one?
what's that?
Where's this one?
This was Route 16. As you go up Route 16, it's on the right, probably about 2 miles up on the right. It was an old subdivision that was not approved back in the, I'm trying to think what year it was, back in the 80s.
Oh, Charlie Russo?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and there's a sign there now that says, sorry about that.
These phone rooms, yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I understand they're selling land now.
That subdivision was never approved.
Right, exactly, yeah, and now with new requirements and stuff, the subdivision will probably be harder to get approved, and then they can sell lots, so. And then I checked up on right now there's a property in town that has that's going to be before the ZBA, and I just got paperwork on it earlier in the week that they tore off the deck, and they now are proposing a new deck almost in the same spot, just up away. So anyway, I went there and checked on it, and it is what it is right now. So we'll find out what happens if they get approved or not approved, and if they can rebuild the deck that they tore off. So I've got to check into that. This was a non-conforming deck too.
And the proposed new deck would be even more non-conforming?
Yes, yeah, it's still, even though it's smaller size, it's still in the Jackson River Conservation District. So, anyway, I'll have to look into that. And then the ZBA meeting's next Wednesday night. And hopefully they'll make a decision that night, and if it goes either way, I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
Right, so I have to.
Yeah, okay. That's about it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anything else on the building inspector? Moving on to item number 7, which is new business. Trustee of the trust fund, signatures required for withdrawal. We have $417.98 for a Staples order. This is all under the Town Office Equipment Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund 0047. Dell sales order of $219.99, and new egg sales order.
Computer
Oh,
stuff.
that was Easter already. $34.99 for a total of $672.96, and so we're asked to make a check payable for that amount. Could I hear a motion for this?
There's a motion at the bottom.
At the bottom, okay. So You want to read that, since you're going to make that?
I move to withdraw $672.96 from the office equipment and maintenance clinical trust fund 0047 to pay Staples order 31015, Dell sales order 22415, and Newegg sales order 22415.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sir? And next on the docket is
Actually, those came in
Liquor Commission.
after, what's that?
So.
So they're not listed on the.
They're not listed here, so this, on B is, will be the board appointments will be put on hold for the
Yep.
next meeting, due to some unforeseen circumstances. But we will move to new item C here. We'll add the liquor commissioner signing of the alcohol for Wentworth Hall license for wedding receptions from May 1st to November 30th. And let's see. Yes.
I have a question on that. if
Sure.
I can. That's for the outside tent. There were some issues last year with noise coming from that. And I think maybe another spot in town, I don't know if it was Whitney or whatever. And I think Bob, you had mentioned it in one of the meetings. It was late at night and you were walking around or something. And, I'm wondering if any kind of restrictions can be put on the board, either the live bands can't play past a certain time. If you're going to approve the alcohol sale, maybe for the first time you should consider, do they have unlimited ability to play loud music? I'm a neighbor, so it's somewhat disruptive, and I did send an email to Fritz asking, he never wrote back, which is not surprising, but it's really disruptive to the town to have liquor in a tent, and that's one thing. I have no problem with that. But the live band going till 11 o'clock at night, I don't know. You can hear it over here, you can hear it all around town. And should it be a consideration?
Bob, you had something?
Well, I just wanted to, acknowledge what Stan's saying. It's been an issue since last summer. The role I played is I talked about it at a meeting and went in the record on the minutes of saying, and this was a week after we had been aware there were a number of different complaints made about, I don't know if it was a band or a DJ that night, doesn't really matter. But I was here doing some work in the office, and I remarked that when I came out onto the porch, I could hear every lyric of every song from here. And then I drove by there, and I just said to myself, I really don't think that this is a noise level that Fritz would be happy with if he was here, for one thing, and that it was certainly would make me feel uncomfortable to be under the tent if it was that loud. So I contacted Fritz, and I basically reached out to the Coppels on February 25th of this year. Because this is an item that's just not going to go away on its own. And I said, I'm emailing you to see if there would be a good time for you and I to get together soon to discuss your plans for the spring, summer, fall functions in the upcoming year. The board has discussed several complaints we received last year related to the noise generated by some of the outside functions at the Wentworth Hotel. Although we were all under the agreement that it's not the board's responsibility to get involved in these types of disputes, I'm wondering if a conversation between you and I might be able to identify some changes that could be implemented that would not impact your business and at the same time reduce the complaints that we receive. And so there was some back and forth email, and I'll say they were very interested in getting together and meeting to discuss what could be done about getting the noise level a little bit more under control. I met with Fritz and his wife, And the gist of it was that I told I said, you know, I know you want to be a good neighbor. Everybody wants to be a good neighbor. And with this tent being used more than ever before, I think it's really important that we can all recognize what's an acceptable noise level and what's not. And I think both Fritz and Ellie were of the opinion that it really was some bands under that tent that were causing a problem. Now, I can't remember what time it was that they said that whether it's a DJ or a band, they stop playing by, I don't know, 10, 10:30, whatever it is. There's a cutoff time, number one, and I said I understood that, but he says, what are your ideas? And I said, to me, it doesn't really matter if it's a DJ or a band, it's the noise level that gets generated, and to me, that's something that you can measure in this day and age. There are decibel meters, there are phone apps you can get to measure noise, and so if there was a way for us to come together and realize what's an acceptable decibel level to maximize out on and what's not, even though we don't have a town ordinance and this would be voluntary on his part, I think it would be a great thing for him to do. He was agreeable. He contacted the folks at the Town and Country. I think he's got somebody that works there that's part of the Labnon family who runs the Town and Country over the notch there in Shelburne. And they said that they require their bands and DJs to keep their noise level under 90 decibels. So he felt like an 80 to 90 decibel range would be reasonable. Now that number means nothing to me. And he also wanted to point out that his contracts for the upcoming wedding season had, for the most part, already been signed, and that they don't currently have a noise level in there, but that he would contact all the parties. He just ended up with a bridal event last week where they came up and tasted some of their meal options and everything, and he informed all the brides at that point that they were looking to cap their noise level at somewhere in the 80 to 90 decibel range in order for that to not be intrusive in the village. And he said it was well received, and that from now on he's writing into the contract a noise decibel restriction, and they actually just signed their first contract last week that had a noise level restriction in there with a measured decibel amount, and he has agreed that his events coordinator that's on site is going to have a way to measure sound and looks to monitor that. And outside of going over there and listening to what that noise decibel level translates into during an actual event, I think that's as far as we're able to go on March 19th, but it is an ongoing issue, and so he's invited me over when he gets his first event going to have me listen to what this is and measure, and I can easily enough get a phone app too to go over there and measure and work with them. They're very amenable, and they want to be good neighbors to the community, and so that's where we're at with it currently. And so everything's been between Fritz and Ellie and myself. The board has not sat down with him. We don't conduct business as a board, but both Bill and John have been copied with the email communications that have gone back and forth. So that's where we stand today.
Well, I wish I had known about this, but on the internet, it's easy to find out what 90 decibels translates to. It might be the sound of a jet engine 10 feet away. 90 decibels is very high, and I'm a lay person, but I think you'll find that is probably his definition of, you can lose your hearing if you listen to it for more than a certain number of minutes. Town and Country, with all due respect, is in the middle of nowhere. I don't know how many neighbors they have, and there's very few close neighbors out in Shelburne where they're located, or
I actually have a friend who lives right at the back side of that I can ask her.
Yeah, I would love to know, you know, what 90 decibels is equivalent to, but it's very loud. I will tell you as a neighbor, we have fewer problems with the decibel level than we do have with how long is it going to go on. I mean, we've heard the loudest bands, and you know, you can live with it if you know it's going to be over like by 10 o'clock at night. You know, and then there's detail questions. Where will this be measured? Is it inside the tent, you know, 5 or 10 feet, you know, or does he intend to measure it how far away? I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. You know, he signed all the contracts, but he knew this was an issue last year. And in fact, if I'm correct, this request for an outdoor liquor license was usually presented in April. It's interesting to me that it's now March and that he's already signed the contracts. He knew. I mean, I wrote to him 2 years ago about this being an issue. You talked to him, and now well, it's too late because he signed the contracts. You know, sorry. Anyway.
Well, it's too late to write it into the contracts. Yeah. He's proposing to do the same thing he would have had the noise level been written into the contracts. And so, and it's tricky for us as a board because we don't have an enforceable noise decibel level ordinance that is on the books. And I would encourage anybody that thinks that if our town is missing an ordinance of any kind, you can, you know, petition a warrant article and get involved that way. That's actually helpful if we know that's the will of the community.
But are you required to sign the liquor license request? I mean, why do you need an ordinance when you obviously don't even have to grant a liquor license for tent use? Do you? He wouldn't come to you if he didn't need to.
Well, he has to have us give him permission for an outdoor license,
but
right?
if you
Extend his license.
if you are able to give him permission, you're clearly able to put conditions on it.
I'm not sure you even need to get permission. If you look at the state letter, it just says if you like have any problems with it, you can comment to that. I'm not sure they need your approval.
Yeah, it says pursuant to RSA 541-A:39, the U.S. Liquor Commission hereby provides the city, town of Jackson with notice of the application and informs you that you may submit data, reviews, comments, or other materials or evidence with respect to the potential issuance of the liquor license. This information will be taken into consideration by the Division of Enforcement and Liquor Licensing prior to its recommendation to the Liquor Commission for approval or denial of the license. So we could send, you know, comments with this, but ultimately it's the state's decision to issue it or not. So with or without our permission, they probably could do it.
Right.
You know, so
I
we're just.
imagine if the town had problems with that 90 decibels is really loud, or they're going till midnight, that they would probably take that into consideration. I don't know. I just, you know, for what it's worth, I just went on the internet and typed in 90 decibels equals, and the first one up is level at which sustained exposure may result in hearing loss, 90 to 95 decibels. A hand drill is 98 decibels. The power mower is 137 at 3 feet.
At 3 feet, yeah.
90 decibels is 4 times as loud as 70 decibels. Likely damage is an 8-hour exposure. That's loud. I mean, there's no way a band I can imagine is going to be higher than 90 decibels. I don't know anything about it. But, I guess he gets another.
I'm more concerned with how late they go.
Me too.
That's my concern.
And I know my neighbors and I never really minded it at 10, and I would say the majority are done at 10. But every so often there's an 11 or 11:15, and that does bother people. That gets to be a bit late.
What would be your recommendation in terms of a suitable or acceptable time of?
I think 10 o'clock is reasonable. They start at dinner, and, you know, I'd like to see 10 o'clock. And then the fact is most of them end at 10 o'clock. And in terms of being a good neighbor, a loud band, you know, there's no such thing as a quiet band. This is not Guy Lombardo here. I mean, he has rock bands, so there's not going to be a quiet rock band. And everybody wants rock bands. It's fine. There's no such thing as.
Right, but I mean, I can hear the Shenandoah from my front porch every Friday,
Exactly,
Saturday, and Sunday night
exactly.
too. I just know that it's there and it's gonna play till 11.
It's gonna play to 11.
And on a clear night, you're gonna hear stuff all the way to the town offices from the
Right.
Wentworth easily. But
But they don't need to request.
I think 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, you're probably not gonna do better than that. But I would think that perhaps if you are telling the Wentworth that they have to be under 90, it might be good to tell Gary at the Christmas farm and tell the shovel handle also.
We don't, I want to make it
Or
clear,
do it.
we do not have the authority to tell
Oh,
them to
yeah.
keep their noise level at a certain decibel level. The town does not give us that authority.
Okay.
They have liquor license permission inside to do.
So
it.
really, that's
This is
just a
the-
compromise, an offer from Fritz.
That's
for
right.
Under 90.
And just like Bob said, potentially somebody could come in with an ordinance next year and, you know, and whatever that goes, obviously. But, you know, that's something that maybe some people might want to consider, you know. But right now, it's not enforceable to us.
Yeah, if anybody, I don't know, John, if anybody that wants to provide anything in writing that we can
We'll-
have, we'll
We'll
pass
send
it
it, we'll
along
pass it along to
for
them.
you.
Sure.
And let the state authority consider it.
So you're telling me that you approve it, but it still has to go to the state authority after the board?
We're rubber stamping it, basically,
Before it goes to the state authority?
before they actually issue the license. But we can attach comments and views and opinions. If you wish, we would entertain that, love to, you know, and then see where the liquor commissioner takes it, if anywhere. Yeah, they may not.
How does the board feel about it? Do they have an opinion one way or the other?
Well, I think my opinion is clear. I've been working with him now for a couple of months on this to try and make sure this is something that's not intrusive to the citizens that live in the village and at the same time is respectful of the business's right to operate. So I think that it's going to be a huge step forward. I can tell you that what I heard when I was out there on that porch last year was not a lawnmower. You know, it was a lot louder than anything you read off on that app. So I'm totally confident that that noise level the night that I was hearing it was something that he would have found unacceptable had he been on the grounds. So I
try 90 decibels and see
I
how it
would
goes.
say if anybody wants to pass along comment and that the state authority would, you know, that you think the state authority might benefit from hearing, we'll be happy to do that. But at the same time, we've got businesses in town and it's tough to hold somebody hostage for events they've been planning when they've complied with all the ordinances and laws and regulations that are on the books. That's the problem. And so it would be great if there is that sense that something should be done, that citizens do petition a warrant article and put it before the town and find out how the majority of people in town who vote feel about it.
Okay, maybe we'll go that way.
Okay, sure.
Any other
And
comments?
we'd be happy if you're working on a language for a warrant article that you want to put out there for a petition and you're not sure how it should be worded, we'll be happy to take the thing and
Let's
vet
see
it
how it
through
goes this summer.
town
Yeah,
council.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
And this is going to be an ongoing thing. I've been invited to come and hear that decibel level when it's measurable at a certain point. And
Great.
so I'd be happy to keep you informed
Good,
on that.
great,
Very good.
thank you.
Any other comments on? We have a motion on the table?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Another item that's being added tonight is the contract with Northtown Associates LLC for the 2015 assessing from the town of Jackson. Basically, the contract is, with a couple of changes for dates and things have been changed around a little bit to meet some of the deadlines Julie has for reporting. And there was a slight increase in fee from, to, I think it was $90 to $100 for going to court, which we haven't done.
Right.
But that's the only increase in the contract from the previous year. Was there anything else that I missed on that?
No.
Any questions on that? Do I hear a motion to sign the 2005 assessing services contract with Town of Jacksonville?
So moved. Second?
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That concludes new business. Any other new business from anybody in the audience? Okay. Moving on to item number 8, old business, which is the double-head parking issues. And again, we're going to address that. We didn't take this, guys. And I guess that was the April 2nd meeting.
Next week.
Andrew Beal is coming up to that.
And can we make sure that we invite Stephen Weir, because he had an interest in being involved in that also? Was there anybody else that,
There was another name we had on the list, and I can't think.
Bill
Woodison.
What's that?
Bill Woodison?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
And moving on to item number 9, which is another round of public comments.
Is the forestry gonna come to that too?
Yes.
Yes, Saco,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carmen.
all right. We are going to head into, need a motion to head into non-public session for a, I need the letters and numbers on that. Do you have that? The non-public one, Julie?
Yeah, that's
No, I'm not, actually, no, go forward. Do you have the numbers for that non-public?